Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Improved Initiative and How to Be a Critical Success. Last week we talked in general about Dungeons and Dragons and different ways that it could be used to help with training or help with education or different things like that. So today I'd like to focus in on a very specific topic that D&D can help with help in training. And that has to do with disability and accessibility. A lot of times companies want to do leadership training and team building by going out for a weekend to a ropes course. Well, that's great. But then you have people like me who can't exactly grab a hold of a rope and hold on to it with any kind of strength because these are splints. These aren't just for decoration and everything. These actually are functional. They keep my thumbs from hyperextending. I have more splints on the way to keep the rest of my fingers from hyperextending. It's a real problem. So what do you do for someone like me who's part of a team who needs to have this team building session, but everyone, given the options that they were given, chose ropes coursing? I can't participate. So how do I participate? That automatically excludes me from something that should be inclusive. Say another person on the team may have a very paralyzing fear of heights. And one of the things that you have to do in the ropes course that you go to is a zip line. And they can't participate because of this paralyzing fear. Now, I'm not going to explain how you can actually train yourself to get over a crippling fear of heights, because that actually has to do with virtual reality, and I don't personally have access to the virtual reality research that is out there. It's coming out of Stanford, actually. Well, I have access to the research. I don't have access to the tools to try it out myself and see how I can make it work. But the research is there. They have been able to train things such as homophobia and Islamophobia, like train that out of people through virtual and augmented reality. So that's something to really keep an eye on, because that's going to be a huge thing in the next very few years. And I'm very excited about it personally. But anyway, back to D&D and ropes coursing. So ropes coursing creates a situation where you can't always have everyone who should be there. And so people miss out on training, they miss out on team building opportunities, they miss out on a whole bunch of different activities that are available to able-bodied people, but not disabled body people. And when I say able-bodied, I don't just mean somebody who can physically lift and pull and walk. I also mean somebody who has, no social anxiety, no anxiety over, fear of open spaces or whatever. That's an able body, but it's not an able body. I'm talking the body as a whole, mind, spirit, emotion, physical, talking the whole body. So I propose, this is actually part of my research, I propose using games as a way to bring everyone together and be inclusive. It doesn't matter to me as a game master or a dungeon master what your gender, religion, sexual preference, skin color, none of that matters to me, because when I look at you, I am not seeing you. I am seeing your half-orc cleric or your hobgoblin bard or whatever it is you've decided to play, your Genasi warrior. I'm seeing the character. I'm not seeing you. And that's something that obviously you have to learn. And the way you learn it is through playing it. So I propose that instead of doing something that's inaccessible or something that excludes certain demographics or certain types of people, do something that you can still do in a weekend. I mean, I've been to Dungeons and Dragons sessions that have gone 8+ hours, and they're fantastic. You take breaks like you should, but you eat, you drink, you go to the bathroom, you do all those things like you would normally at a retreat or something like that. But instead of having to be out and trying to be active and physical and trusting your partners and all this other stuff on these ropes courses that actually are kind of dangerous if you are not the most physically fit person, you could be sitting at a table with these same people that you are trying to build camaraderie with and trying to build team working skills with. And you have a facilitator who is running you through something in which you not only have to work together as a team, but you have to communicate as a team, come up with a plan, preferably stick with the plan, although that's not always the right answer either. Be able to adjust on the fly to a new plan, or, we have plan A, plan B, and plan C, and then you get into the situation and you're like, well, we're coming up with plan D as we go about it. So, winging it is a skill that you can learn. But by doing something more like this, you have people who might not be as physically able to do a ropes course still able to sit and enjoy a team building session or a leadership training session, depending on what you're training. Dungeons and Dragons is accessible. You need whatever it is you're going to keep your notes on, whether that's a tablet, whether that's pencil and paper, whether that's, a soundboard or whatever, if you're in a wheelchair and you don't have the ability to speak. Like, for example, if you have ALS and your throat muscles have atrophied, so you have to use a computer to talk, you have that with you. You can have your computer do everything for you. It is an accessible game. You can also make a scenario in which anybody who is an able-bodied person now has to play a character that has some type of disability. And you can create a world in which it is difficult for them to survive with that disability, to train and teach how to handle someone who is in that position. For example, you have a human fighter who is missing an eye. How do you navigate the world? Especially when you know that as a fighter, you're going to have people coming up on the side of you that is blind. How do you accommodate for that? Maybe you have a person who, so this isn't really a disability, but it is a racial feature. Maybe you have a tiefling. Tieflings have horns growing out of their head. You can't really hide it. It's just kind of there. They also have a tail. Very difficult to hide. It's always there. So you can use that as either a racial situation, or you can use it as a disability situation. They have full function, so I would probably use that more as a racial trait, but they're gonna get stared at a lot. How do you mitigate that? How do you make it not be the first thing everyone wants to notice? It took me a long time, and I will freely admit this, it took me a long time to adjust to not referring to people by physical features and traits. So when I talk about somebody, I'll say something like, oh, it was the person who did this, rather than it was the woman who had blonde hair and a scar on her arm. That's descriptive, and that can tell you exactly who I'm talking about. But that's drawing attention to things that aren't important. Unless you're, actually talking about scars, and that scar has to do with what you're talking about. But at the same time, 9 times out of 10, that's not the case. So it took me a while to train myself to refer to people by their ideas, by their words, by their actions, not by their physical appearance. Physical appearance changes. Even if you have a disability, your physical appearance will change. D&D gives you the opportunity to be in a safe space to explore a lot of different options that you don't get to explore in the waking world. If you have a situation where you have a white male person who doesn't understand what the benefit, I should say, they don't understand the benefits that they get from our standard society. I believe that one of the best ways to train them about that is to put them into a game where they must play a character such as a tiefling. To give you an idea of why, okay, so I really love tieflings. I think you've probably noticed that with how much I talk about them. One of the reasons I love tieflings so much is they didn't ask to be what they are. And to me, that is a crucial thing when it comes to training about race and disability. I didn't ask for the disabilities I have. I didn't ask to be born, with wibbly wobbly joints and the ability to sprain literally every joint in my body at a moment's notice. That wasn't a feat and a superpower I was looking for. I would have rather been invisible or been able to read minds. No, I take that back. I don't want to read anybody's mind. I would rather touch somebody and heal them or something like that. I wanted those types of superpowers, not the ability to dislocate my joints. Tieflings didn't ask to be born as tieflings. Tieflings are a result of a pact with an extraplanar creature, usually a demon, way back in the bloodline. And that demon's like, now I'm gonna claim my prize. And it shows up in the form of a child being born as a tiefling. So they have the horns, the tails. I also think tieflings are just, intimidatingly gorgeous. And I like playing those kinds of characters because I'm a high charisma person. Anyway, tieflings are terrifying. And I don't want to draw a parallel between tieflings and black people because I don't believe that is appropriate, but I'm going to use it as an example in this situation because it's a recent thing that's happened. The shooting that happened in Kentucky, Georgia, where the gentleman was running in the streets because he liked to run and that's where he was running, was stalked by the two guys, and then eventually got into an altercation and was shot. It had to do with the color of his skin. He was running while being black. In the D&D world, tieflings suffer from that, not that exact thing, but they are very much distrusted and very much disliked by a majority of the races that exist. It used to be in the player's handbook. I think my husband and I were talking about this just a little bit ago. I think it was 2nd edition, might have been 1st edition AD&D, but there used to be a column of information about how each race viewed each of the other races, and some of them were very negative, especially the elves. The elves viewed themselves as the supreme of everything, and everybody else was lesser. Thankfully, they stopped doing that in the player's handbooks. They at least stopped it with 3.5, because I was just looking through my 3.5 book and didn't see anything like that. It could have been in 3.0, but I think it was 2.0. I know it's not in the 5th edition. They don't do anything like that in 5th edition. The only other player's handbook I know of that does anything like that is for Vampire the Masquerade, and it talks about how each clan feels about the other clans. To me, that's a little bit different because that's like family groups, not, racial. So I don't remember where I was at this point. My point in all of this is D&D is an accessible method of training. And there are very, very key things that we as gamers don't necessarily think about as being something that's trainable until you look at it from the perspective of an IO psychologist who is very interested in games. So basically, if you look at it from my perspective, you can see where you can use different aspects of the game to train things in a real life setting. That's probably enough of my jabbering for today. So if you have questions, please just leave them below and in the comments, and I will answer as many of them as I can. If you mention something that I didn't talk about, it might be the next video. I'm always looking for questions that I can answer regarding how to use Dungeons and Dragons and how to use other games for training purposes and everything. So please just leave comments for me and I will get to answering them as quickly as possible. And I really do hope that you enjoyed this little bit of a talk. I'm trying to keep them short so that I don't inundate you with information, because remember, this is what my dissertation is on, and I have over 200 pages of work in on this. So that's going to be it for today. We'll talk more D&D next week, so I will see you next time.